As Dr. Phil mentioned, nearly 500,000 people are sexually assaulted every year. So we want to continue this conversation with someone who works with survivors. Shari Botwin is a licensed therapist who's an expert in trauma, abuse, anxiety, and depression. She's also written books on the subject, including Thriving After Trauma, Stories of Living and Healing. Shari, thanks so much for being here tonight. So let's start right off the bat. Why are sexual assaults so underreported?
There is so much stigma around reporting these types of crimes. And the idea that if somebody comes forward, they may not be believed or they may be made to feel like it was their fault, even though we're getting to a place in our society where we're starting to listen to survivors. Oftentimes what happens when people come forward is they're told, no one will believe you, it was your fault, you should have done something. We still have so much work to do.
You know, Shari, I was a criminal prosecutor for 20 years, and I know how hard it can be to get a guilty verdict in a sexual assault case. And, you know, the process itself is like a whole other level of trauma for the victim. Many times I would have to warn the victim that you will probably not get that justice that you're hoping for out of the justice system. What do you counsel people as far as going through the justice system and being able to deal with it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I work with a lot of survivors who are trying to seek justice, and I also work with plaintiffs. And one of the things I say to them is, if you're coming forward and you're trying to get justice, you need to know that you know what happened to you. You know the truth. Don't let what anybody says to you, whether it's someone on the defense side, the detectives, whoever it is that they're working with, don't ever let someone tell you that what you're saying isn't true, because you know you were there and they weren't. So to really keep your feet on the ground. And also, I think it's really important, if you're going to come forward, you need support. When someone is sexually assaulted, they don't have a witness. They're usually by themselves. So in order to really stay strong and stay grounded, I think it's really important that you have what I would say a tribe of supporters behind you, so that you don't have to re-experience all that isolation.
Yeah. You know, right now, media mogul P. Diddy is being held without bond. He's accused of some really horrible sexual abuses. There's a new documentary about his alleged freak-offs that just dropped this week. Here, take a look.
Do you know people who have paid off to keep this quiet?
I think I said too much.
Straight up porn directed by Diddy.
The way he came up on me, it scared me. I'm just grateful to have made it out.
You know, we saw this same kind of attention around the R. Kelly case. How significant, you know, we talk about these documentaries and what an impact they have on the public, but I want to ask, what's the impact on the victims? Are they more traumatized by these documentaries, or does it help them to actually realize that they're not alone?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I've talked to survivors who feel really empowered and less alone when they watch these documentaries. But then I talk with other survivors who say just even seeing the image of these alleged perpetrators will really stir them up, and they will start having flashbacks and memories. So I think it depends on what your experiences have been and where you are in your healing journey.
You know, many times when you see celebrities sued for abuse, you hear this public response, well, why did the alleged victim wait so long? You know, maybe this is just a money grab. What's your response to that?
I mean, I have to be honest, that drives me nuts, because I've been working in the field for almost 30 years. Most of the people that I work with, they don't say anything about what happened to them, even after I meet them, which could be 10, 20, even 30 years. It's normal and it's common for people to not come forward right away, because again, there's so much shame, there's fear of retaliation, there's so much stigma that when I hear those kind of comments, I want to say to people, unless you've experienced this, you don't really know what you're talking about, because you don't know what people are feeling after they're assaulted.
Shari, what are the biggest misconceptions about abuse that you want our viewers to understand?
I mean, I think, again, there's so many misconceptions that people bring this onto themselves, or that they somehow caused the assault. I think, again, there's so many myths around sexual assault. And I think it's important to remember these types of crimes are happening every minute of every day. Sexual assault does not discriminate. Anybody can be the victim of sexual assault. And I think it's really important to note that oftentimes adults who are sexually assaulted will have some type of trauma or childhood abuse in their history, which puts them at a higher risk because it's something that's already familiar to them. So I really just want to say to people, this is something that happened to you. This is not something that you brought on yourself. There are rules and laws around consent. And I think that we really need to educate the public about that. And lastly, I really want to make sure I say this. Men can be sexually assaulted too, which we are hearing as more victims come forward with Sean Combs.
Very, very important point. Shari Botwin, thank you so much for helping us understand this very important issue. And if you need help, there are plenty of free resources available, including the National Sexual Assault Hotline. You see the number right there on your screen. You can call 1-800-656-4673 for confidential help 24/7.